Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson and I am joined here by Kyle. Kyle, how are you doing?
Doing good as usual, fighting off the rain, but everything's been okay. How's it going over there?
Yes. Rain is my puppy is not happy being inside all day, but somehow we're getting through it. So before anything else, we have some business to attend to. The worst take of the week. Looks like I'm on a bit of I don't know what the opposite of a roll is, but that's what I'm on right now. Another worst take of the week. I just completely forgot about the Browns getting Jack Conklin when I talked about their poor offensive line. Someone pointed out in the comments. It's totally. I just completely forgot about that. So worst take of the week goes to me. Kyle, last week you made me watch the last time the Rays had been in a World Series game when they lost in 5 to the Phillies. I remember my parents made me go to bed. I had to listen to it on the radio in my room because they wanted me to go to bed, but I didn't want to, so I was listening on the radio. And on the final strikeout, I didn't even hear the call, but I knew that it was over because I just heard the crowd going crazy. Very sad time in my life. But Kyle, what terrible memory are you gonna bring up again this week?
All right, so I have one here. You're getting off a little easy. It's only a 4.5-minute video, but it's called Series Rewind, posted by the NHL from 1 year ago. The Blue Jackets sweep the Lightning in the first round. So you can go check that one out and enjoy that. And yeah.
I had a feeling something about this was gonna happen at some point. Just the ultimate being a Lightning fan. After that first game, I said, I'm not even mad at them. I'm mad at myself for believing this year would be any different. Just a terrible life being a Lightning fan. But this episode will not be terrible. This will be a fun time watching this one. What we're going to do is we're going to count down the top 32 teams. Great sentence there, Jackson. All 32 NFL teams, over-unders. What the projected win total is. We're going to see if they're going to go over or under it. It should be a pretty fun show. Kyle, are you looking forward to it?
I'm always looking forward to it. I'm ready to go.
Okay, so we'll just start off. And also, I'm going to put the timestamps in the comments below so the Raiders fans don't get mad at me for not putting them there. So anyways, we'll just go ahead. We're going to start top to bottom, highest to lowest. So we'll start off with the Baltimore Ravens. 11.5 is their projected over-under. Kyle, you have the floor. What do you think about that? Over or under?
11.5 is a really interesting number for the Ravens for me. I actually was going through their games, and I kind of had it at 11-5. I was a little surprised. So this is where previous season strength of schedule, I feel like, is tough to evaluate team schedules because I think that they're, the Ravens, I believe, have the easiest strength of schedule by record last season. But at the same time, I'm looking at a lot of these games, and there's not a lot of really confident wins I had in this team. I do think this is an elite team, and I think they're going to win the division at probably 11-5. But they opened the season home to Cleveland, at Houston, home to KC, which I think are 3 legitimate playoff teams. Then they have at Philly, home to Pittsburgh, which will be a tough one, which is always a tough game against Pittsburgh, at Indianapolis, at New England, and then they also play Dallas. So, I see 5 locks for wins, 5 or 6 lock wins, but there's also games that I think are up in the air, which is why I have them at 11-5.
Okay, so under is going to be your official take. Gotcha. I'm going to go over here, and in fact, I'll go one step hotter on this take. I think the Ravens are going to win the Super Bowl next year. They're going to be my Super Bowl prediction team. I'm on a bit of a roll. I predicted it right 2 years in a row now. Granted, the Patriots and Chiefs were kind of already favorites, so it wasn't too great. But I think the Ravens are a really good football team. They had more touchdowns than punts last year. Lamar Jackson had more touchdowns than the team had punts just by himself. And I think that they've gotten better. I think that their defense is now a more complete team. I think that they had a bad matchup. But at the same time, we've seen John Harbaugh in the past rally a team after a terrible playoff loss to then win a Super Bowl the following year. Of course, there was the Billy Cunliffe missed kick game, and the following year they went on to win the Super Bowl. So I think the Ravens are really good. I think that they're going to win more than 11 games, even though 11.5, that's a high over-under to clear.
Yeah, I think this team is still going to be really good. I think they're going to be one of the contenders for the Super Bowl. I have them, Kansas City, as probably my top 2 out of the AFC still. I don't think there's any doubt that this team's going to compete. And they plugged a lot of the holes that they had from this offseason. They addressed, bringing in Campbell was a big one. I think the biggest thing that could happen that makes this team slip a little bit is having to replace Marshall Yonda. Like if that interior offensive line struggles out of the gate and affects that running game a little bit, I could see this team slipping a bit. But overall, I still think this is an elite team. I just, looking at this schedule, like regular season wise, I could see this team going to 11-5 and still winning the Super Bowl. I just think the schedule isn't a lot of for sure wins.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe we'll get some difference here. I didn't take too much into the schedule because I always feel like with a schedule, sometimes you think it's going to be a hard schedule, but then those teams end up not being very good and it becomes a lot easier schedule. So it's hard to, that is a fair point. It isn't something I've took too much into account, but yeah, fair enough. And we can just go ahead and move on now to the team that won it all last year, also at 11-5, the Kansas City Chiefs. How do you think, will the Kansas City Chiefs go over or under?
All right, so this is one I have over. I think this is a 12-13 win team. So you said that you didn't really take a lot into the schedule. I looked a lot at these schedules with this. Okay. And I just feel like the middle of their slate, there's a lot of wins here. They do have Houston at home to open the season, and then they're at Baltimore week 3, and then follow that up home to New England. But I just feel like overall there's a lot of wins on this schedule, and I feel pretty confident even with some of their back half of the schedule is the Jets week 8, Carolina week 9, both home games. They have a bye. Then they're at the Raiders, at Tampa, home to Denver, at Miami, at New Orleans, home to Atlanta, home to the Chargers. Which, I mean, so you say there's a lot of road games there, but I feel like, on the road to Tampa, New Orleans are tough, but overall that's a lot of wins on that second half of the schedule. So even if they slip up once or twice early in the season, I feel like they're going to be just fine. I see this as a 12-13 win team rolling after their Super Bowl.
Yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs were tough for me because, again, 11.5, that's a lot. Because, if you're betting, it's which one do you think what has a better chance of happening? Them going 12-4 or better, or them going 11-5 or worse? So obviously, in a clean slate, there'd be a much better chance that you go under that. I do think that there is some interesting stuff with the Chiefs. One thing that's worth mentioning is that despite the fact that they won the Super Bowl last year, in terms of the turnovers, that's one thing I did look at was the turnover differential, not just differential, but how many turnovers you generated. They got the 7th least amount of fumbles, which is something that I feel like is often a lot of luck. There is some skill in that, often with like a pass rusher knocking the ball out of a quarterback's hands. But for the most part, a fumble recovery can be a lot of luck, and they were unlucky in that. And despite that, they still won 12 games last year. But I think I'm just going to go under here. And I just think 11.5. I'd go under with any team except for the Ravens in that, and even the Ravens. I had to think about it. I just think that's a lot of wins.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. The way I kind of evaluated, these teams at the very top that I think are going to be really good regardless of their over under. It's like, how does this team get better or worse? In my opinion. And so, like I said, with the Ravens, like if that interior offensive line struggles, I could see that running game, I still think it's going to be good, but I could see it regressing a little bit. I guess the struggle would be for Kansas City is like if they fail to get a pass rush outside of Frank Clark, then I could see this team kind of struggling on defense and having to win games, 40-35 and, dropping a few games in that regards. But I think overall this team's going to be fine. And that's why I kind of like them. Plus, they won 12 games when Patrick Mahomes was kind of banged up half the year. He had that hand thing, and he had a few injuries and a few knocks throughout the year. I could see this team being just fine going 12 or 13 wins.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's one thing I also did was I wanted to make sure I wasn't like too positive because that is a criticism I get sometimes. I think every team's going to win the Super Bowl. So I made sure I had 16 unders and 16 overs. And so that the Chiefs might have been an over had I not done that. This was one I thought about very hard, but I just figured, okay, 50-50. What do you think there's a better chance they win 12 or less than 12? And I think that it's just a lot of wins. But I still think the Chiefs are really good, and they're probably the second best team they are the second best team in the AFC, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think, like I said, these two teams are the top 2 in the AFC, and I think they are going to be for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. All right. So move on to number 3, New Orleans Saints. They have a 10.5 over under. I'll start this one off. I'm going to go with under here. And again, it's a lot of wins, 11. And I just feel like, is there a chance that Drew Brees, regresses? Yes, there's a chance of that happening. Is there a chance that their defense regresses? Yes, there's a chance of that happening. Is there a chance that Emmanuel Sanders doesn't turn out to be that number 2 receiver that they need, and they still have that problem of needing a number 2 receiver. Yes. Is there a chance that the interior offensive line can have problems like it did in the Minnesota game? Yes. I don't think any of those are going to happen, but I think there is a chance all of those could happen. And when they're talking about red flags, you got to figure out, again, it's all a percentage thing. And I think there is a better percentage that the Saints win less than 11 games than more than 11 games.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I actually felt slightly under 2. I feel like this is a 10-win team. There are a lot of wins, I think, on this schedule, but there's a lot of tough road games. The one thing that I think could benefit to them is that they obviously get one game against Tampa Bay at home to open the season. They also get Green Bay, Kansas City, Minnesota, and San Francisco all at home, which obviously playing at home in New Orleans is a big advantage for them. But I could see this team regressing slightly. Like you said, betting on these old quarterbacks is so tough, especially when we're not really sure what the training camp's going to look like for a lot of these teams. I could see this team taking a slight step back. And I actually do think Tampa's kind of the better team in the division this next year. So I actually, although the over-unders had New Orleans ahead, we're going to talk about Tampa in a second. I had Tampa ahead of New Orleans in my book. And I could see them taking a step back, but still making the playoffs with 10 wins.
Yeah. Let's just we'll skip the 49ers and go to the Bucks right now because we're kind of on that subject, and then we'll get back to the 49ers. So what did you have for the Bucks then at a 10 over under?
Yeah, so this felt like an 11-5 kind of team for me. Okay. Yeah, I just liked a lot. I feel like their opening schedule, obviously they have at New Orleans, but I feel like after that they could take advantage of a lot of games. So they have Carolina at home, at Denver, which could be a sneaky tough game, but I think a game that they're definitely more talented in. Then they have home against the Chargers, at Chicago, home to Green Bay, which is a tough one, then at the Raiders, which can be tough, and then at the Giants. But I still feel like that's 8 games where I feel like pretty confident that Tampa Bay could be 6-2. And at that point, then, they need to go, 5-3 to the second half of the season. And I like Tom Brady to go 5-3 in the second half of the season. I think this team's loaded on all sides of the ball. I think this defense can be really good. I think a guy like Antoine Winfield, who I really liked out of the draft, was a great get for them and can be really good in that secondary. I think they addressed the offensive line needs that they really need, was their biggest need, along with a quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over 42 times in a season. And, I think if they add a guy like Devontae Freeman as kind of that receiving back to play with Brady, I think this team can be really good.
Oh yeah, I don't know so much about Devonta Freeman. I think Vaughn could maybe fall into that role, but I don't know if I trust an aging running back. But I have them as an under, and I would love for them to be an over, but maybe that's just me being a neurotic Buccaneers fan who doesn't want to get my hopes up. But there are some talking about red flags here. There are some red flags. Tampa Bay, I talk about the fumbles. They recovered the second most amount of fumbles in the league last year. Part of that is Shaq Barrett. Part of that is Shaq Barrett just being a guy who does a great job of getting a bunch of strip sacks. But a part of that is luck too. You have to factor that in. I'm not totally sold on the secondary yet. I know it played a lot better once we got rid of Hargraves, but there still was some moments. I think that it could take a step forward next year, but again, it's a red flag. And I also think that, again, betting on a 43-year-old quarterback, there's another red flag there. I'm just a bit too worried on Tampa Bay right now, even though I'm hopeful that it as well. And also, listen, yes, Winston turned the ball over a ton. He also made some incredible passes and got touchdowns out of nothing. So it's hard to really rate his value, but it's not like he was a mess back there, and it's not like a mediocre quarterback. They might end up being just as good, but just in a very different way with Brady and Winston in terms of overall added value.
Yeah, that's fair. I just feel like overall, I think this defense takes a step forward. Simply, you look at the field position numbers. I think the defense had the worst field position numbers in the league, obviously because of the turnover situation. And I just feel like the lack of, Brady doesn't commit turnovers. That's the one thing he's always been pretty good at throughout his career, or not pretty good at. He's very good at throughout his career. And I just think that's something that's going to be a huge advantage to them. And I think this division is going to be really competitive, but I also think that they're the best team and had the most talented offense in that division, that I think that they should be able to beat anybody. This team has so much talent around them that I think they'll be just fine.
Yeah, and there's just another thing I want to mention is that yes, Brady has been good at that for a large part of his career, but he has never been in a Bruce Arians system that we don't know exactly what they're going to do. Are they going to still push the ball down the field where historically quarterbacks get a ton of interceptions their first year in the Bruce Arians system? Their running game is still, I think, a question mark. Yes, they got Tristan Wirfs, great tackle, who should help them. But at the end of the day, it wasn't really a run blocking right tackle that we desperately needed to get the running game going. It was a lot of the inside stuff, even though Marpet and Jensen are pretty good at pass blocking. The inside run blocking has kind of struggled. It's not really sold on Rojo, and Vaughn's a third-round rookie. So I just think there's too many. Again, I feel like they're a 10-6 team. Like, to me, that's what I think. And so if I have to go under or over, I am going to go under for Tampa Bay.
So who do you have winning this division?
Right now, I would have the Saints. I would probably say that I think that I think they're both around 10-6, but I think that there's probably a better chance the Saints win than the Bucks win.
Okay, so we're pretty much. I think we're both pretty even on the same team. You have more doubts about your team. Being a Tampa fan, I guess I can understand some of them. I do have Tampa ahead of New Orleans, but I could see either way. New Orleans is always really competitive in that division, so.
Again, there's things that drive me crazy about Bruce Arians, about how he refuses to go to analytics. Like, there's just I do have some. Again, it's more so I feel like with the over-unders, it's almost what are the percentages? And I think there's even though I feel like there's a chance the Buccaneers go 14-2 and win the Super Bowl. That is very, very possible. And you can make the argument they have the best chance in the NFC to win the Super Bowl, and also make an argument that you should bet the under on a 10-win team, because if you think it's over 50% chance that I think they're going to be a boom or bust type team, I guess is what I would say, which is why I feel that I would go under, but I still think there's a chance that they can be very good.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's a fair point. I do feel like this could kind of be a disaster because you are playing with, an aging quarterback and a tight end who hasn't essentially played in a year. So I can understand it. I believe in the talent, and having seen Tom Brady for 20 years, I'm not discounting anything. He had 24 touchdowns and 8 interceptions in what was a really down year. This was considered an awful year, and he had no talent around him. I think he's going to be just fine in Tampa.
Yeah, we'll see. I hope you're right. We'll go to the team that we skipped, the 49ers, 10.5. I have this as an over. I think the 49ers are a really good football team still, and a great regular season football team. I think that they're going to win more than 11 or more games.
Yeah, I think they're a good team too. I do have them as an over. I think the one thing that could trip them up is the middle of their schedule is kind of a gauntlet. They have week 6. From week 6, they have the Rams at home, at New England, at Seattle, home to Green Bay, at New Orleans, bye, and then at the Rams and home to Buffalo. And I think that could be that's a tough stretch right there. And then they also have Dallas towards the end of the season and Seattle again. So I could see them slipping up in that regards. But I mean, we both talked about it on the coaching rankings podcast. We both believe in Kyle Shanahan, and we believe in this team. And I think this team's really good. I guess maybe the defense regresses slightly without DeForest Buckner, but I think overall this team's just rock solid in every spot.
Yeah, that should hurt, although getting Kinlaw should definitely somewhat make up for that. Hard to totally replace a DeForest Buckner. But yeah, I'm with you. And not too much to talk about the 49ers. I think we've talked to them a little bit to death over the, since they made the Super Bowl recently. But let's go to a team that this is one of the easier unders for me. The Dallas Cowboys sitting at 9.5 wins. That was an easy under for me. What did you think about it?
So I still believe in, I'm probably Dak Prescott's biggest fan right now. I do think this team's going to win the division. And so I feel like winning the division means I feel fairly confident team's going to win 10 games. You could say, 9-win team wins the division is fair, but I feel like this team's going to win 10 games. And I just, the opening of their schedule is a little tough, but I do feel like there's a lot of wins here. And I don't know. I believe in this team. I think McCarthy figures this out. This offense was the best offense in the league last year, and I think could just be even better with CeeDee Lamb. And I just think there's so many weapons at this disposal on offense that even if the defense isn't great, I still feel fairly confident they're going to win a lot of games. Yeah,
I mean, the offense was, using certain statistics, was the best last year. I wouldn't say it was the best last year. I think that the Chiefs and the Ravens were significantly better, But I do think the offense is still very good. I'm not out on the offense, but O-lines, they've had some retirements now. Their guys getting older. Ezekiel Elliott's not getting any younger. Who knows how long running backs are going to last? I still don't love their defense just as a whole. And I actually think that their division, I think, is going to get better as well, whereas last year it wasn't very good. And I don't really see why this team is going to get a ton better. And so I think that's going to, and now they're paying Dak Prescott franchise tag money. So now they have less money to spend it on potential depth. I think that it's going to be an under.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a fan of this team. I still really like what they do offensively. And I think CeeDee Lamb it doesn't typically go to wide receivers, but in terms of offensive rookie of the year players, I think he can be that guy. Even with the limited touches, he's just always open. I think the big thing that's going to happen with Dallas is they got to get wins early in the season. So early on, I think the only two playoff teams from last year are Philadelphia and Seattle. They got to come out of going into the bye week with at least 6 or 7 wins, I think. And I think it's possible. And I don't know. I believe in this team. I believe in what they can do. And like I said, I'm a big Dak Prescott fan, and he's actually kind of my outside sleeper for a possible MVP pick. And
wow. Hot take right here. Okay.
You can already put this down as worst take of the week. It's already coming. But I just think that this offense is going to work. I think it's going to be just fine. I believe in what McCarthy's saying, that, he's embracing more of a progressive approach. It got a little stale in Green Bay. He's learning from his mistakes, is what he said. I think this team does get better, and I think they get 10 wins. And I just think this should be the best team. This team should win the division in my eyes. They're the best team in that division, and I feel like they should win it.
Okay, you said they could be the best team as in the division. You're not saying they
yes.
could. Right. Not a Super Bowl team. Yeah.
Not a Super Bowl team. NFC East. Just looking at rosters, I feel like NFC East, this should be the best team.
Well, I disagree with you, and I think that the Philadelphia Eagles, who are the next team on this list at 9.5, same as the Cowboys, I'm going over, because I think the Eagles have a better offensive line now. I think that they have one healthy. The receiving core is somewhat. It's not definitely not what the Cowboys is, but it'll be better than what it was last year. To have Zach Ertz, which is probably the best weapon either of those two teams have, its best singular weapon. I think their defense could be better. Again, neither one of them is going to get a ton on their defense, but I just think that I also like Doug Peterson a lot more than I like a coach that got fired 2 years ago and is now just getting a job. I think the Eagles are going to win the division, and I think the Eagles are going to win 10 games as well.
Yeah, so I had this team at 9-7. I mean, if I say Dallas is going to win the division, I feel like 9-7 works for this team. And we're going to see what happens with this team. I'm not really convinced that you're just going to plug Darius Slay in there and then all of a sudden the entire secondary is fixed. I think he's a legitimately good player, but I think there's a lot more holes in the secondary that they're going to have to address. And I'm not sure that I'm not convinced that the weapons are going to be there for Carson Wentz. They really like Jalen Reagor. I wasn't a huge fan of him as a first round pick as a wide receiver. And then, you have the question, you talked about percentages and weighing every variability. I think the big variable that always comes with the Eagles is what's Carson Wentz going to be week 16? Is he still even going to be on the field in week 16, week 17 is the biggest question. And I think that could be the biggest thing that hurts the Eagles going into next year.
Well, and that's actually part of why I am a little bit more, we both defended the Jalen Hurts selection. Is I think that if Wentz misses 5 games this season, I think that it won't be as big of a deal as it has been in previous seasons, because I think they have a plug and play quarterback who can be very effective. I think that, you have a couple of older guys who knows how they'll be. Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson. I'm not going to hold out too much hope for either of them, but also Marquise Goodwin. They have some guys that could potentially I could see doing well with them, but I also think that this is a team that when Wentz is healthy, I don't think, and when Doug Peterson is with Doug Peterson and Wentz, I don't think they need a great receiving core. I just think they need a decent enough receiving core, and as long as they don't get riddled with injuries, they should be okay. And with Miles Sanders, he played very well at the end of this last season. I think him maybe taking a bigger role this season. I think I see this as I'm not like crazy high on them, but to me, I think Dallas is probably like an 8-win, maybe even a 7-win team in my opinion. Whereas I think Philadelphia is like a 10-win team, and part of that is, while I do think the division will be better, I still think it is one of the weakest, if not the weakest division in the NFL still.
Yeah, I think them and I think we're going to talk about the AFC East here, and that's one of the divisions I'm also kind of low on. I just feel like at the same time, they play each other week 16, and doesn't it always feel like that their last game between each other is always usually the one that's deciding the division lately? And I just feel like with this game, week 16 at Dallas, that could be a big spot for the Cowboys to win this division. And then right before that, I also, this is another stretch of the schedule that I don't like. So week 11, sorry, they're at Cleveland, home to Seattle, at Green Bay, and then home to New Orleans. And I could really see this team stumbling there. And then I like Jalen Hurts and I like him as a prospect. But let's say hypothetically week 5, Carson goes down. You like this team to win, to still get 10 wins if Carson gets hurt week 5, week 6?
Well, no. I mean, but I don't like the Cowboys to win it if Prescott goes down. I don't think I'd like any of these teams to hit the over if they lose their starting quarterback for 10 games.
I trust Andy Dalton more than Jalen Hurts, though. And,
That's
Carson
true.
Wentz, I think, has the track record where, if I'm going to bet on a quarterback not playing 16 games, he's probably pretty close to the top of my list in that regard.
Yeah, no, those are totally fair points. Don't disagree there. We'll go ahead and move on now to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have over-under of 9.5. Are you taking the under here?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I kind of am. This is an 8-9. Yeah,
you think they're pushed? They're going to end up 9-5-1.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I see this as a 9-7, maybe an 8-8 kind of team.
Okay.
This is another team that I feel like the schedule doesn't do them some favors at some points, but at the same time, like I'm not really convinced that everyone's like, oh well, Ben Roethlisberger's coming back, so the offense will be fine again. But at the same time, I don't really see Ben Roethlisberger coming back and just leading the league in passing again. I don't necessarily see that happening. Now you say, oh, well, even like 50% of what Ben Roethlisberger was is better than a guy named Duck. And that's a fair point. But at the same time, I also don't know if this offense necessarily gets good enough to where this team is, competing for a playoff spot in my eyes. Especially when the AFC got better to me. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, the division could definitely be a real thing. I have this as an over. I think the Steelers are going to be very good. I think that, again, it's right to be worried about that. Like if we're acting as though we're actually gambling and betting whether what we should do, there's very real logic in saying under because we don't know about Ben Roethlisberger. There's a big question mark there, and playing the odds, you could say no. I have it as an over. I think that I think it's not just getting. It'll also be getting James Conner and Juju Smith-Schuster back. I think that this team could be, and I think that Chase Claypool should help them a lot. I think their offense will be a lot better. This is another one of those teams that they had the most fumbles recovered last year. So again, perhaps a bit of luck there with their defense. Maybe I think their defense probably is a bit overrated. But that being said, I still think it's very good. And I think that this is, a 10-win team for the Steelers seems about right. Although I would not be surprised if they hit the under.
Yeah, I just think that, like I said, the same thing with Carson. If I'm going to bet a quarterback who doesn't play 16 games, Ben Roethlisberger is still probably pretty close to the top of my list. And I mean, I don't know. I just feel like maybe the best days for some of these players on this team are behind them. And that's kind of what I'm worried about. And I could see, like I said, I think the AFC did get better. I was looking at it and I feel like there's a lot of really competitive teams in the AFC. And maybe that pushes Pittsburgh out in that regards where there's just too many good teams. And maybe an 8-8 record just isn't, or a 9-7 record just isn't good enough to make the playoffs. And I could see that happening to Pittsburgh this season.
Okay, well, let's go to from one team with a Hall of Fame quarterback to another team with a probable potential Hall of Fame quarterback. The Seattle Seahawks, they're the last with a 9.5 over under. What do you have for them?
I do have over. I think this team's going to compete for the division title again. Them in San Francisco are going to be really good. There's no parts of their schedule where I'm really terrified. Obviously, they have to play San Francisco twice. They have to play Dallas, who, like I said, I kind of like. And they have to play the Rams twice. But they get New England at home. They get let's see here. Sorry about that. They get the Cowboys at home. And I kind of like what this team can do. Obviously, they have a lot of skilled players. They have a guy like if I were to bet on the MVP tomorrow, I'd probably put a lot of money down on Russell Wilson. And I just feel like he could have a really big year with this team. I think DK Metcalf, puts a lot more together and he takes the next level forward as probably a top level receiver. The question you have for the Seahawks is can they manufacture pass rush? Obviously without Clowney, who was, just okay for them last year, but obviously without Clowney, can they manufacture a pass rush?
You'd have Russell Wilson as MVP over like Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I just feel like repeat MVP winners are really hard to come by. So like even if I think Jackson's still going to be really good. Mm-hmm. I just feel like the narrative's kind of set for Russell Wilson to win 11 games and take home MVP this year.
It does seem like if it's close, he would get it. He would get any tiebreaker, or even if it wasn't quite a tie. But I think I'd still go with Mahomes. But nevertheless, I also have the Seahawks as an over. For Seattle, they're just one of those teams I don't bet against. They've been successful for so long. I'm not going to bet against them. And it's been working so well for me so far. I know that's not exactly expert analysis, but sometimes the simple analysis is the correct one. And I think that the Seahawks don't win 10 games. The division is tough. I mean, I could see them being a 10-win team that ends up only winning like 8, but I think they'll win double digits. Kyle, your new division overlords, the Buffalo Bills, 9 is their over/under. Do you think they will go over or under?
So I guess first of all, I should clarify. I don't think we did. We're using the Action Network article from May 19th for anybody who wants to know where we got these over/unders from, because I know it's not always perfect. So Buffalo Bills at 9. This is my first push. I think that I feel like this is a 9-win team. I think this defense is going to be the best in the league. I just love everything this defense has. Like I said on the Coaches Show podcast, I love Sean McDermott and what he does for this defense. The tough thing is I see this team as a 10-win team, maybe an 11-win team if they can beat New England, but they haven't done that with Josh Allen, and I'm kind of worried about that. So that's kind of why I have them at 9-7 as a push, but I still feel like they're going to be division winners this next year.
Yeah, see, I did not do any pushes, but if I were to do pushes, this probably would have been that. I was very torn on this one. I went with under eventually, and probably for a lot of the similar reasons you have. I just don't trust their offense. Singletary was he looked good. I don't feel like he's good enough to carry an offense. I still haven't seen enough from Josh Allen to say that he's good enough to carry an offense. I think this is a team relying on their defense. And as we saw with Chicago last year, that can be a very fluky thing to do. And they could easily end up only winning, 7 or 8 games trying to do that. And it's tough because, if you go down, it's very difficult to get back into a game. Although Josh Allen, for all his faults, is a pretty good fourth quarter quarterback. But I just don't trust their offense, and their backup quarterback is now texting racist stuff, so he might be out of the league. So there's just a lot of problems with. I just think there's a lot of problems on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt too. I just feel like this defense is awesome, but if Josh Allen's turning the ball over a ton this season, and they're just getting terrible field position, I could see this going south fast. And then I could see Josh Allen out of the league next year. But I think that they're going to keep it very conservative on offense. They're going to, you're going to see a lot of read options with Singletary and Josh Allen. And you don't get very often where the quarterback's faster than the running back. But I think they're going to, plenty of spread read options with that. Then, he's going to throw it deep to John Brown a few times and Stephon Diggs, which I think could be a good fit there because he's actually an excellent deep ball receiver. But I just feel like, I feel like this team wins a division, but there's nothing about this offense that's going to wow me.
Okay. Well, again, we'll stay with the division then, do a little bit of shifting here because I want to stay with another team that's over under 9. This is the team I think is going to win the division. Your New England Patriots, they have an over-under of 9. To me, this is an easy over. I'm never going to count the Patriots out of winning 10 games until I see them not do it. I think this is an over. So judging from what my quick math here, If you say that the Bills are going to win the division and are a push at 9, this means that you have the Patriots as an under at 9.
Yeah, I had this team as an under. I don't believe in these weapons yet. Everyone wants to talk about N'Keal Harry and glimpses look good, but I want to see it more than just glimpses. I think that, whatever hip knee problem was going on with Sony Michel last year, I feel like it's kind of lingering. And he didn't have a very good year last year when our offensive line was really good. And now our offensive line loses Dante Scarnecchia, which the last time that happened looked atrocious for the offensive line. And then the defense, I think the secondary is really awesome. Like, I think that the Patriots love 3 safeties on the field. And I think having Adrian Phillips, if he's healthy, as that third safety is just going to be ridiculous. And J.C. Jackson as a third cornerback is really good. But if you look at the last 3 years of DVOA, the team that led the league in defense didn't finish in the top 5. While I think this will still be a top 5 defense, it's natural to see some sort of regression. And I could see that from New England this year, where they're finished at like the 5th or 6th best defense. But I just feel like the offense is going to be just bottom tier. I just don't see enough top tier talent in this team to be confident that they're going to win 9 games, especially when they have probably one of the toughest schedules in the league.
Yeah, so we disagree on this one. I find it a bit ironic that, or a bit funny that, for the Bucks, you are higher than I am, despite me being a Bucks fan, and for the Patriots, I am higher than you are, despite you being a Patriots fan. But I mean, one thing that I find very fascinating about last year, again, I've talked about the fumbles recovered, because I do think that's actually a huge thing to talk about, because I think sometimes you'll win sometimes 2 or 3 more games just because you got fumbles going your way. New England, despite all their turnovers, they were 11th. They weren't even in the top 10 in terms of fumbles recovered. So I think that's interesting. I also think that, they have the reigning defensive player of the year, despite my complaining about it. They have, I think, a top
player in the game.
Yes. According to some people, think he's better than Aaron Donald, but we won't get into that. I think that I think that they still have a top. If you say they're still going to have a top 5 defense and they're going to have a bottom tier offense, I think Bill Belichick wins 11 games with that. I think that that's all he needs is a top 5 defense and an offense that can do okay. I think they're going to have Stidham run the ball. I think they're going to run the ball like 40 times a game. It's going to be running the ball. They're going to try to not have him throw the ball whatsoever. And I think Stidham can throw the ball when he has to. I think he can be a game manager type. I think they can groom him to do that. He's now had time to sit behind Brady and learn. I think they'll win. I think they'll win more. I think they'll win the division.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't wild about Stidham when he was coming out of Auburn. I feel like that the Auburn and Baylor offenses that he played for are the least translatable to the NFL. And I feel like a lot of the quarterbacks that come out of those offenses struggle to make reads. And that was the thing that was ultimately RG3's downfall, despite how, athletically awesome he was, that, a lot of defenses caught up to him because he couldn't read defenses. And I mean, we'll see what happens with him. I think, the biggest thing for him is just he can't turn the ball over. And that's going to be the biggest thing, is what happens there. I think that if we're going to run the ball 40 times a game, I'm for it. I think that we can be pretty good at it. But like I said, we're losing the best offensive line coach in football, who has proven that he's incredibly valuable for making that offensive line that much better. We're losing the fullback that made our offense go as far as running the ball, because Devlin was essentially in there as that 6th offensive lineman. And then we have a running back who's our lead running back who couldn't get 4 yards of carry last year. So if we're going to run the ball 40 times a game, there's nothing about what that is that makes me believe that running the ball 40 times a game is going to work. I just think it could get ugly for us. And, if we're not scoring 10 points a game, then this team's just going to be terrible. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and also losing Jamie Collins and Kyle Van Noy should
Yes.
take a step back as well. But they, on the bright side, they drafted about a dozen people that no one has ever heard their names of before. So I'm sure that somehow they will all be superstars. So yeah, interesting stuff with the Patriots. And I don't mean that sarcastically, because that's just the way the Patriots draft. We'll move on to the Green Bay Packers. They have a 9 over under. I have the over here. I think that they're getting a bit too much heat for losing badly to a very good team and also winning a lot of close games to teams that they should have beaten by more. I think this is a good football team. I'm not sure if they're going to win 13 games, but the idea that they're going to lose 4 more games than they lost last year, and that would just be a push, that seems a bit too much, bit dramatic for me. I think they hit the over.
Yeah, I was with over on this one too. I think this should be 10, 11 wins, which I feel like is kind of regressing to the mean for this team because, like we kind of talked about, I didn't think this was a 13-win team, but I also don't think this is a 9-7 team. I don't think this is going to be the downfall for Aaron Rodgers in that Green Bay and, whatever chemistry issues they might have because of drafting Jordan Love. I don't think there's going to be any downfall to any of that. The one thing that could stump the Packers in terms of scheduling is I was looking at is they have a slate from week 3 where they're at New Orleans. They're home to Atlanta, which they should win that and then have a bye. But then they're at Tampa, at Houston, home to Minnesota, at San Francisco. And I can see that stumping them a little bit. But even if they split that those 4 difficult games, especially the road ones, I still think they're 10-6, 11-5 at least. I just think this offense is too talented. I mean, I'm on the free Aaron Jones campaign, and I'm going to say that until he starts getting the ball just about every time. I think he's a top 5 back who I think we said last week was 15th in carries. So if they give Aaron Jones the ball, I see this team being really good again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. We can, we've already gotten into our debates over how exactly good we think LaFleur is, but either way, we both agree he's a good coach, and I think that just being in a second year in his system should help them. So again, maybe not 13 wins, but part of the reason why they won ugly, so to speak, was because that was the way that was working, and they didn't have to change things up too much. It'll be interesting to see what they do. But yeah, I have over as well. It's kind of I think an easy one for me. Another easy one is the Colts. They have over under of 9. To me, I think that's an under. I think the Colts are getting a bit too much love. I don't really see why they're going to be so much better this year than they were last year. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually kind of high on what they've done this offseason. Then I just started looking at this team and I'm like, what exactly am I excited about here? I guess, you say, Jack Doyle and Trey Burton should at least, I don't know, like this team just, even the offensive line solid. I just don't think this offense is going to be very good. I think that what Phillip Rivers did last year, had me very concerned. And then they drafted a running back, Jonathan Taylor, who I think is solid and can be good behind that offensive line. He also fumbled the ball like crazy in college. I don't have his exact numbers up here, but he had the most fumbles, I think, in college football last year. And that's a little concerning as a guy who's such a high prospect and why I was kind of down on him compared to the other running backs, despite being such a good runner overall. And this offense, I feel like could just be very bad. There's not a lot of weapons there, even though Phillip Rivers might be protected. He's still got to throw to good players, and he had good weapons in Los Angeles at the receiver position, and he couldn't give them the ball. So that's kind of where I'm under on Indianapolis. Also, I see this as an 8-7 win team.
Yeah, I think that Frank Reich is a good enough offensive mind that they won't be a bad offense, but I don't think that I don't know if they have the talent. And also, again, comes back to the percentage thing for Colts fans. I'm not saying that they definitely won't win 9 games. I'm saying that it seems like a 10-win, 11-win team, that's their ceiling. And so I think that there's probably only like a 20 to 25% chance that they do that, which leaves a much bigger chance that they don't. And so for the percentage thing, it just seems like an easy one to me to go with the under. We're agreeing now. This isn't as fun. It's more fun when we disagree. Let's see if we disagree on this next one. Minnesota Vikings. I think they'll win more than 9 games. I think they're a good team. I think that their secondary could get a bit better. I think getting rid of Diggs, but then drafting a wide receiver in the first round. I think this is the team that I think they probably stay around the same, but they won 10 games last year. I think they probably win 10 games this year as well.
Yeah, I know these some of these take a conservative approach, but I felt like 9 wins was a little weird. I thought this team was very good last year. And with Mike Zimmer coaching that defense, I feel like you should just automatically lock 8 wins. So that means the offense essentially would need to win 2 games. And as much as, I question this offense losing Diggs, especially when, they didn't throw the ball very deep that often, and they just lost one of the best deep receivers in the game. how is this offense going to be able to vertically keep teams honest? But I feel like with Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Kyle Rudolph, I feel like this offense should win 2 games because the defense is going to be good enough to win a lot of games next year. So I'm with you on that. I'm over 2.
Yeah, and I think that right. I like the sorry. I like what I think that with Dalvin Cook, it's Kevin Stefanski. They lose in Kevin Stefanski, but I think that he kind of showed the blueprint of like, hey, Dalvin Cook, when you have him be an outside zone runner, he is fantastic at it, and so they know that now. But I also think one of his real problems was he wouldn't throw the ball deep enough, and I think that that's you have, especially with Adam Thielen, you have someone who can be very good at getting the ball deep. He didn't throw it to him enough. I think that now he will. They probably will have that happen more often. They could drafted Justin Jefferson, who I think could be a very good number 2 receiver. I think that this offense is going to be a lot better. Their secondary, I do still worry about it. It wasn't good last year, so there definitely are some problems there. But they got Jeff Gladney, who I actually have some concerns about. But as a whole, I think that this is going to be at least a 10-win team.
Yeah, I see 2 really good teams in this division. I think they're both going to be just fine. They're both going to be playoff teams for me.
You think the Packers and the Lions are 2 really good teams in the division? No. Okay, moving on. We'll that was the last of the 9 over-unders. So now to 8.5. The Cleveland Browns, if they were 15.5, you'd be going over, correct?
Yeah, I mean this is definitely my one lock for an over. If I'm going to bet one team over, I'm betting 8. I'm betting this team wins 9 or 10 games. I just, like I said, we've talked about, I think Stefanski's offense and what he did in Minnesota directly translates to what Nick Chubb should be able to do really successfully in Cleveland. And, now that they had the offensive line pieces that they've added that are going to be really good and make that offense work, then, Baker should have plenty of time and play action to just roll out and hit some of the best weapons in football with Jarvis Landry when he comes back healthy, Odell Beckham, and Austin Hooper. And then you forget as a third down back, they still have Kareem Hunt. This team's just going to be awesome next year offensively, I think. And yeah, I'm over 8.5. I've talked about the Browns enough, so.
Well, and one thing we haven't really talked about too much is like Nick Chubb might be the best running back in football. Like he is insanely good. And again, there's so much talent here. I think the Browns really come down to how do you feel about Baker? And I think that they're going to go as far as Baker Mayfield is going to go. I had this as an under. I went back and forth on this one. I do have this as an under. But it's just because I don't know how much I trust Baker Mayfield. I just don't totally think that I have to see it before I'm going to say that they're going to win 9 games. 9 games is a good amount. This means that they're going to be a top tier team. There's any team can get injured. I needed 16 unders. This would have been probably an over had I not done it that way. 8.5 is close, but I just going to have. I think this is an 8-8 team. I'm going to go with under.
Yeah, I mean, he does have to get better. And it's weird to say that, he's probably one of the most unproven quarterbacks that we kind of just assume is solid. Because even when he was good that second half of the year in Cleveland, the schedule they were playing was pretty atrocious. So, he's got to play better and he's got to be able to, handle some pressure a little bit better. But I think that if they're going to pound Nick Chubb like we think that they're going to, then he should have a lot of time and it should be easy reads for him. I don't think they're going to ask him to do a whole lot, especially when they have 2 what I would consider elite level running backs behind him. Yeah,
well, I mean, the talent is there. We'll just have to see. Again, this is what I don't feel good about saying under, but we'll see what happens there. I do think Cleveland has a lot of talent, and I do think that within the next couple of years they're going to be a playoff team. Probably, I'm just not so sure about this year. I think that might be a year away. That's just kind of my stance on it. But and plus, they'll have to learn a new system. That's never easy. Baker Mayfield's already, he's going through a new system every week, it seems like. But anyways, we'll move on. We'll go to the Los Angeles Rams, also 8.5. To me, this is an over. I think this is I think people are sleeping on the Rams a little bit. I think they're going to win at least 9 games.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I think that the talk about the regression in this team was really overblown, and that ever since the Super Bowl, Sean McVay's lost it. This offense was just fine, and I actually think I don't know if this is considered a hot take, But my take would be is that Cam Akers has a better year than Todd Gurley next year. I think he could be really good in this offense. This offense has proven that a good running back can make it really good. And I was really high on Akers and his ability coming out of Florida State this year. And I think he could have a better year than Gurley this next season.
I don't disagree. I agree. I think Akers is going to have a very good season. He's definitely someone, for your fantasy football fans out there. I'm assuming he's someone that you would want to go after. I'm terrible at fantasy football, so don't ask me. But I do think that it seems likely that Akers will be very good for the Rams. I think having a consistent running game should go a long way. I think this is a good football team. Everyone's acting like they won 9 games last year. They're going to do worse than they did last year. I don't see how. The division is the only thing that it's a tough division. I mean, they were probably a 11 win team last year, but just with the division, they lost a couple more. So I do think that's probably, they went 3-3 in the division. So they were that's 6. I guess it's not that crazy, but and 3-3 with playing the Cardinals twice. So they definitely, I think, can be a much better. I think they'll win at least 9 games.
Yeah, I'm just with you on that. I feel like this team, talent-wise, this team should be just fine. I guess if you question Goff, I understand. But at the same time, I just feel like they're the better team in a lot of the games they play. I really like their weapons on offense. I think Jalen Ramsey now is going to be just fine with that defense, along with Aaron Donald. I think this could be a really dangerous team. I'm not sure it's still a Super Bowl contender, but I think they're right there as a playoff team. They're right in the conversation. I don't think this team's worse than last year.
Yeah, agreed. So we also have, we'll just go ahead and move on from, I think people are a bit, I'll say one more thing about the Rams. I think people are a bit too, what have you done for me lately with them? Yes, Goff wasn't great last year. He was great 2 years ago. So, let's give him a little bit of time. And then speaking of what have you done for me lately, the Titans lately have done a lot, but in the past, maybe not so much. They have an over-under sitting at 8.5. To me, this is an over. I think they are a good team. I think that they will win more than 8. I mean, 9-7 is over, so they're going to be over.
Yeah, I believe in this team. I believe in Mike Vrabel, so I'm with you on an over, especially with some of the mess that's happened in Houston. I think they're the best team in the division. Even, with Deshaun Watson in Houston as probably the best quarterback, or not probably, definitely the best quarterback in that division. I think that they're going to win the division. They just have a really good team. I like all the pieces that they have everywhere on the field. So I'm with you over on that one. I see this as a 9-10 win division winning team.
Yeah. Right. And I guess the one question mark is just if Derrick Henry dies, but we'll see how that goes. Moving on to the over-unders that are 8. Chicago Bears are 8. They actually, I think, quietly had an 8-8 season last year. I think it felt like they went like 6-10. They went 8-8, which wasn't terrible, but I think they're going to go under here. I think there's a better chance that they win 7 games than they win 9 or more. So I'm going under.
Yeah, like I said, I thought there's 2 really good teams in this division, and I feel like there's 2 teams that I have a lot of questions about in this division, and the Bears are the first one that I have. I feel like there was a lot of weird things they did on offense that I didn't really like, and I'm not sure that Nick Foles or, Mitch Trubisky, obviously, they have their own questions about Trubisky, but not doing the 5th year. I'm not sure Nick Foles is a guy that's just going to make this offense, be good enough. I think this offense slips back a little bit, and it's natural for a defense to regress, and I think that if this defense regresses enough, this is just going to be a bad football team.
Yeah, they so much remind me of like a carbon copy of the Jacksonville Jaguars from last year. It's like literally down to the getting Nick Foles of, we had a great run the year prior with our great defense. It started to fall off. We regressed and didn't make the playoffs. Now let's try to patch things up by getting a good quarterback, completely forgetting that that's not even close to being all of an offense. I think this is going to be a disappointing year for Bears fans, but could be wrong. Houston Texans over under 8-8. I have this as an over. I know that they lost, one of, if in my opinion, the best wide receiver in the game, but they got a 2nd-round pick back, so it was an even trade. And I think that I still think this is a very talented team. And listen, Bill O'Brien, he has a lot of faults. He is one of the better regular season head coaches. He wins the division every year, so I think that they'll win the division again. And I think they'll win 10 games, maybe 11, and then lose in the first or second round of the playoffs.
Yeah, I really struggle with this one. I almost said push. I think I might go slight over with, like you
Okay.
said, I think that they just randomly, Bill O'Brien somehow does win games. I do think that they're a worse team than Tennessee. I think the one question I have about this team is that, they paid Laramie Tunzel a lot of money, which he was a really good offensive lineman last year. He was a great tackle. But I still have a lot of questions about this offensive line. And then between David Johnson, Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, like what weapons are going to be left by week 16, week 17, But I don't see those guys lasting 16 games, And based on their track records, I could see all of them getting hurt. And that's going to be my biggest question. Like, who's Deshaun Watson going to be throwing to by the end of the year?
I have a conspiracy theory. I think the Texans, I'm not sure if I totally call it a conspiracy theory, but I think the Texans are, hear me out. What if the Texans went with an RPO style offense next year? Would they saw Lamar Jackson and how much success it had? So they trade away a great receiver who wouldn't really help them too much with that. They get back David Johnson, who could be very good in an RPO style offense. They have a quarterback who could run that kind of thing. It would be a terrible decision, but could that be possible?
I don't know about that. I don't think they have the offensive line good enough to do that.
I think I'm still trying to figure out why they traded DeAndre Hopkins. That's what I'm going this far off the deep end at this point.
Well, the crazy thing that's going to happen is this team's going to win 11 games again with even less weapons on offense, and then Bill O'Brien will give himself an extension for it. And the Texans will just be sitting in this purgatory of 11 wins and first round exits for the rest of their lives, or Deshaun Watson's career at least.
Yeah, agreed. Last 8-8. This is an easy one for me. I think the Chargers are rebuilding. They're 8-8 over under. I think they're going to go under. I just think they're rebuilding.
Yeah, we keep agreeing on these. I think I'm not trusting a guy with a team with Tyrod Taylor or Justin Herbert in his first year to win 8 games. So I'm going under. That's all I really have to say about this team, really.
Yeah, whatever. We don't have to talk about them. Another team I don't really care that much about, the Falcons, 7.5. I say under, but they're a wild card. Who knows?
I'm kind of under on this team, too. I think that this is the end of the Dan Quinn era. And, a lot of the talk we had about Matt Ryan is I'm really concerned about what this team's going to have left. They lost their number 2 option in Austin Hooper. I don't think Todd Gurley has anything left in the tank. And it could just be – and the offensive line's really struggled the last 2 years. An average of 45 sacks over 2 seasons from Matt Ryan. And he could be running for his life and then throwing it up to Julio and just hopes that works for 16 games. But I'm not really convinced it's going to work at all. I'm going under. I don't think Dan Quinn should have been back. He's a defensive specialist coach that isn't good at defense, so I'm going under.
Yes, agreed. And again, I'm kind of the same way. And plus, the division's going to be tougher probably. So seems like under. We'll move on to the Denver Broncos. This is what I have as a big over. I think the Broncos are going to be good next year. I think they're going to be one of the breakout teams. 7.5 feels a little low. I think all they have to do is go 8-8. I think they were probably an 8-8 team last year that just had luck go against them. I think that they're going to do well this year.
Yeah, I like this team a lot too. We've both talked about our affinity for Drew Lock and what he did last year. And, it seems like it's in the right steps of him actually being a really good quarterback. I think this defense is going to get better next year. Bradley Chubb's going to be back, plus AJ Bouye. And, they have a lot of weapons on offense. I really like this team. And part of the reason why I had the Chargers going under is because I think the bottom 2 teams that they had in this division of the AFC West are better than the Chargers. So I just think that the Broncos and the Raiders, I trust the Broncos and the Raiders now more than the Chargers. So I'm going to say over on those 2 teams and probably under on the Chargers. So I'm going over on the Broncos for that.
Okay, yeah, and we'll stick with the Raiders as well because you brought that up. And I know this is going to be, we're going to probably get more people watching this than the rest of the podcast combined with all the Raiders fans out there and Raiders Nation. I think that the both teams are going to go over 7.5. Again, there are some question marks with a lot of these teams, but I feel like when you start to get down to the teams that are under the 8-win mark, the question marks almost become a good thing where it's like, hey, this could end up making them do very well. This could make them do very well. And I also think that, with Oakland, I think that they should have a better receiving core. Say what you want about should they, who they should have drafted. Should they have gotten Judy in the first round? Whatever. Ruggs will be good. He'll help them. I think their defense, hard to get a lot worse than it was last year, but it also should get a lot better. I think they also were I believe the fifth or sixth worst in getting fumbles. So you would think luck would go their way a little bit better. Part of that was just that a terrible defense, and I think they've added a lot of talent through free agency. I think they'll be a better team. I think it seems like both of these two teams, they feel like playoff contending teams for me. But I'm not saying that they will, because you never know, but they feel like the teams that are going to contend for the playoffs.
Yeah, I have these two teams actually really close. It really just depends on how you feel about a lot of the pieces. I feel like the Raiders are still a year away, but I still feel like this can be an 8-win team. It's really hard to imagine this offense doing worse. I think this offense gets better because they have better weapons, and Josh Jacobs is obviously a year more experience. They have a solid offensive line, and now they're faster on offense. They've addressed a lot of their defensive needs, particularly a linebacker position. And I see this team being solid. I think they're a year away from being a playoff team, but I think they're solid, and you do see improvement this next season.
Yeah, and they even got a couple corners. Seems like they're making a clear effort to get some good tackling corners. So a lot of good stuff there for the Raiders. I think they'll be all right. I think they'll be good next year. We'll go on to the Cardinals. This is an interesting one for me because 7 actually. This is one of those that seems exactly right. 7. This is one I would not bet if I was betting. I'm going to go over. I don't feel strongly about it, but I just think if there's a million universes, I think there's more than 500,000 that have them winning 8 or more games. But again, don't feel strong about it.
Yeah, so I had 2 pushes throughout this, and this was my second push. I feel like this is kind of the Vegas bait zone. Everyone's really high on the Cardinals offseason, and they think people are just going to pound the over on this. And then, I've talked about how I question a lot of the hype for the Cardinals this next year, that I still think that they need to add some pieces on the offensive line. They need a little more help on that defense besides Chandler Jones. And I could see this team, being solid, but I still think they're a year or 2 away from being a real contender, which is why I kind of had push. I think this could be a 7-win team, and that's probably the best thing I have for them.
Yeah, and they seem like they're not. And it also seems like I think the Cardinals realize we're not trying to win a Super Bowl next year. We're just trying to get as much talent as possible. We're not really worrying about what kind of system they're going to fit in, especially on their defensive side of the ball. Offense should be better, but again, Murray is young. Let's give him a little bit more time. Let's not expect things immediately. Another 7-win team is the New York Jets. What do you have here? I'll let you go first. Over or under?
So my theme for this is that the AFC East is going to struggle, mainly because they play the NFC West, which is tough. I'm going under. You look at the schedule to open, they have Buffalo, San Francisco, Indianapolis, and Denver the first 4 weeks. And then they also play KC and New England back-to-back. And then they also play on the road at Seattle and Los Angeles Rams back-to-back, ending the season with Cleveland and New England. I don't see this team winning 7 games. I don't think this team, with playing the NFC West and Buffalo twice and New England twice, I don't see them winning 7 games.
I also have them as an under. I think their defense is underrated. I think that their offense is abysmal. I still don't love it. Yes, they made some strides. Like, don't get me wrong, through the draft they made some strides, but I don't think they did enough through free agency. I think this is a team that's content with not being very good next year. I feel if we need to free Sam Darnold from the Jets because I still have no idea how good he is because we can't tell because he's getting sacked every 2 seconds into a play and no receiver is ever open. So how are we supposed to know if he's good or not? The Jets are one of the more frustrating teams to me. I'm not like one of those like Adam Gase is the worst ever, but he's definitely not done much. And I think that they're just I just don't have faith in the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Jets' highlights from last year were all trying to hand the ball off to Le'Veon Bell, and there just being instantly 3 defenders in front of them because the offensive line just caved in. And I don't really see any reason why that's going to change this year. So I'm still going under on this team. I'm not a big fan of Gase. I don't think he was qualified for the position or 2 positions that he's had. And I could see him on his way out of this offseason. So
yeah, and I know people are going to bring up the Jets' record last year. They did win 7 games last year, but their point differential was still minus 83. So definitely compare that to the Broncos. They were also 7-9. Their point differential was minus 34. or the Chargers, who are 5-11 and their point differential is -8 somehow. I think that they were. I think they were not a 7-win team. They won 7 games, in my opinion, last year. And I think that they're going to have to. I think for the Jets, things are going to get worse before they get better. And we'll move on to the Lions. The Lions, for me, I don't think that they're going to win. I'm not. They're an under. They're an easy under.
Yeah, I mean, I think this team has talent to be solid, but I also think that they overpaid for a lot of that talent, and they have a very bad coach. So
yeah,
I'm going under on that one.
I know people are going to bring up they did a lot, what I forget exactly what it was, but David Blau, then they did terrible with him. That was a lot of why, but I also think something, having a backup quarterback matters. I think that, and basically completely relying on Matt Stafford to get you to a 9-7 first round playoff loss for the past decade hasn't necessarily been the best strategy for them. I still don't think it's going to work out this year. It seems likely that they're going to be like a 5-11, 6-10 team. At first, before I looked at them, I thought maybe this could actually be an over because maybe people are going to be underestimating them. But 6.5 is high for me for them. I think they're a pretty easy under.
Yeah, I feel like this at the best. Like you said, you play out the variables, especially with Minnesota and Green Bay in that division. I feel like best case scenario is a 6-win team. Even a game like Chicago, like the defense, we say you could see regression this season, but it should still be solid. So that's going to be a tough game to win, twice. So yeah. I still feel like best case scenario is a 6-win team in the bottom of that division. And worst case scenario is Matt Patricia's out by week 6,
Yeah, definitely. The Miami Dolphins, I kind of went back and forth on this one as well. They're 6.5. I think the Miami Dolphins should be a better team, and they won 5 games last year, but I don't know if they're going to win a bunch more games. I think I'm going with the under at 6.5, even though I do think that they will be a better team.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I think that they overshot last year going 5-11, and I feel like that they're going to improve by 2 wins on a team that wasn't a 5-win team last year is kind of bold. So I'm going to go under with this one. And then, like I said, I think the AFC East is going to struggle with that NFC West gauntlet. Plus, they have to play KC this year along with that, and they have to play at the Raiders, which I think is going to be a tough game. I just think that I see this team as maybe a 5-win team again.
Yeah, that feels about right. And they won 3 more games than the Bengals, but they also their point differential was -188. The Bengals was -141, just to kind of show their point differential was the worst in the league by a good margin, despite winning 3 more games than the actual worst team. So the beginning of last year was so bad. Part of that was just Josh Rosen trying to make Josh Rosen happen. But I do think that. I think this is an under. I think and I think they know that too. They're another team that they're just trying to generate as much talent. I think next year is the year they're planning on trying to make a run for the playoffs. What about a weird team to talk about is the Giants? I can see this one going either way. What did you have with the Giants?
I'm actually going to go over. I could see this as a 7-win team. I think that they improve that offensive line, which is going to be important. And, I actually kind of believe in Danny Dimes. Weirdly enough, I think he's kind of solid. He's got to stop turning over the ball so much, which is a big thing, obviously. But I feel like he has so many pieces around him, especially they added Evan Ingram. He's going to have Ingram, Saquon Barkley, and Golden Tate. I feel like that's good enough to get 7 wins, especially on that offensive side. And this was a defense that was already pretty solid. I like this team. I think that they're going in the right direction. I still feel like they're at least 2 years away, but I feel like that they're on the way up.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree about the defense being solid, but I think that their defense is the problem in my opinion. But I do think that I also have them as an over. I think that their offense should be good enough. I think that they've they got the best tackle in the draft in my opinion. So I think that should help them a lot with Andrew Thomas. I think that I'm interested to see. We probably compared Saquon Barkley to all these Hall of Fame running backs, maybe a tad too early. Maybe got a bit excited after a rookie season. He did well. Maybe he's not quite at that level, but he's still very good. And, he got hurt last year. That didn't help things. But I think that I like Danny Dimes as well. I'm I'm not ready to call him like a future Hall of Famer, like Eli Manning. But I do think that he can be. I think he's solid. I think over again. This feels like they're going to win 6 or 7 games. This is the people that make these things do a great job because it's so difficult to guess. But I think that I would go over as well.
Yeah, I just and then talking about that defense, I think they get better pretty much this year. I like Blake Martinez. I like Leonard Williams. I think Xavier McKinney I actually really liked. I think him and Jabril Peppers can actually be a really good safety combination. And I just think them, and I think they were pretty high on Ryan Connolly before. I thought he got hurt last year. Let me double check that. But I just think that they're solid pieces on this defense where it can get a lot better. And I just think that the offense has enough talent that they can be pretty good. So I'm with 7 wins. I still feel like they're a few years away, like I said. But there's enough talent on this team where I don't see them like regressing.
Yeah, I love Peppers. I don't love Blake Martinez, but I think that they've added enough talent on defense that it should not be as bad as they were last year. And I think that their offense should be a lot better. Yeah, we agree. I think you're probably a bit higher on them than I am, but we do as a whole agree. We'll go to another team. This is the 5.5 wins is their over under. The Carolina Panthers. I had this as an over.
Okay.
And the reason I have this as and I have them as an over because I think that I don't totally agree with this whole they're tanking, they're going to be terrible. I think that they're rebuilding. I think they realize they're not going to make the playoffs this year, but I don't think that they're going to just go in there and suck. I think that Teddy Bridgewater should give them somewhat decent quarterback play, and I think that this is a team that has talent around it, even if it's not going to be fantastic. I think 6-10 seems like exactly. This seems like a total 6-10 team. So 5.5, I think they'll do that, and I think there's a better chance they win 6 games than they win 5 or less.
Yeah, I mean, I was originally going with this is going to be one of the worst teams in the league. I think the defense has young players, but I'm not sure how good the young players are going to be is the problem I have. And then offensively, you say, okay, Christian McCaffrey should make this offense at least all right.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you could say. But I also don't think the offensive line is going to be awesome. And I'm not ready, even with the sample size, I'm not ready to say that Teddy Bridgewater is going to be good enough. And I guess I want to see it from Teddy Bridgewater before I'm ready to say, okay, yeah, I believe in that's going to work. So that's kind of why I have an under. I still think that, I may not still be on the worst team in football next year, but I don't think they're going to be very good next year. So I'm going to go under. I'm going to go 5 wins, maybe 4.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I think this is going to be one of those teams that everyone acts like it's going to do terrible, and then they only do very bad. That's my opinion. That I know I believe that's most of the listener question is which team is everyone saying it's going to do terrible, but you think it's just going to do very bad. That is the one I have. We have 3 teams left. We'll go with the Cincinnati Bengals next. They also have a 5.5 over under. What did you have for them?
Sorry, give me 1 second. Let me pull up theirs. I have them as a under again. I think this team's going to be better than last year, but I don't think I'm ready for them. I'm not confident enough and say that they're going to be a 6-win team next year. I'm not really convinced Zach Taylor's the guy. I want to see more of Zach Taylor before I'm ready to say that. And I still, this is still kind of a team that I could kind of shrug my shoulders about. I think the defense can be solid. That defensive line with Geno Atkins and DJ Reader could be pretty good. But I still feel like I'm leaning towards 5 wins for this team rather than, a 6-7 win team.
You're not sold on Zach Taylor yet after he won 2 games last year?
No.
What more does he have to do, Kyle? Yeah. No, I mean, listen, they're a wild card a bit. We'll have to. But I don't think Joe Burrow is going to cause them to win 4 more games. A rookie quarterback like Andy Dalton was not the problem last year when he was playing. They obviously took him out to make sure they got the number 1 pick. But at least that's my opinion. But I think that I think that they're rebuilding. Another one of those teams trying to generate talent. Maybe not necessarily trying to fit a team to fit a certain system right now. They could be better in the near future. But they're at least a year away potentially too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I just think that you know, it's a long rebuild. That's what it's going to be. And I think they have some pieces in place that I really like, but overall I'm not ready to say this team's going to win 6 games. I just think
Okay.
that a 4-win improvement's really tough.
Yeah, exactly. Now we'll go to the Washington Redskins. Ready to see Dwayne Haskins break out, have his MVP season. This is easily a team that's going to win a Super Bowl. What do you have for the Redskins at 5.5 over under?
Under. I
Mm-hmm.
I don't like Haskins. I talked about this on the quarterbacks one. I do
Mm-hmm.
like Ron Rivera, and I think having that, kind of adult in the room will help. But I also don't see a lot of wins here. They opened the season in Philadelphia, which is going to be a tough one. And, I do like I do think this is the worst division of football, but I'd still kind of like the top teams at this division, with the Cowboys and the Eagles. I think those are solid football teams. And then, like I said, I think the Giants are going to be improving to where I could see the Redskins essentially be 0-6 in the division. So if they're going 0-6 in the division and have, I think, by far the worst quarterback in the division, then I don't see where this team gets 6 wins.
I mean, it seems hard to say that they'll go 0-6. I mean, going 0-6 in the division is, I mean, granted, they did it last year, so it's possible, but, it doesn't happen very often. So, 3 teams did it last year. It seems likely that I think that they'll probably find a way to. I think here's the thing. I do like Ron Rivera a lot, and I think that he should help them out a good amount. Hopefully, there won't be any meddling from upstairs, and he can really control things pretty significantly. I think they should be getting Juice back, whoever, or Geist back. Whoever, we'll see how well he if he can play. With all the injuries. I think that they're a team they're definitely rebuilding. So we're kind of see what they have. But I could see them actually being better than people realize. Although I do have them as an under. I think probably 4-12 seems right for them.
Yeah, I don't think there's enough talent that this team's going to get better right now. I do think that Rivera is taking this as I'm going to see what I have, then I might rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm taking under with them.
Yeah, I do like their defensive line, and Chase Young is going to get him an extra win by himself, but we'll see. Last on this list, the Jacksonville Jaguars, over under at 5. They have the lowest over under on this list. Will they go better or worse than 5-11?
This is actually a kind of hard one for me because my questions for the Jaguars is who's going to be on this team.
Mm-hmm.
You look at guys like Yannick Ngakoue and Leonard Fournette, and I'm not necessarily convinced that they might be there at the end of the season, but I actually kind of like a lot of the pieces that they have offensively. We both said that we're big fans of Minshew, and then you're pairing Minshew with running back duo of Fournette, who's a good first and second down back, and Chris Thompson, who's a really good third down back. You're getting a guy like Tyler Eifert, who, if he can stay healthy, is a big if. He's a really good tight end. And then I really liked DJ Chark a lot last year that I think, and they got Laviska Shenault to where I think this offense can actually be pretty solid next year. And I think, if I'm going to believe in Gardner Minshew, then I have to think that they win 6 games. So I might just go over and just see what happens with this team. I don't think they're going to be good. And there's probably more scenarios where they go 4-12 over 6-10. But I just think if I believe in Minshew to be good enough, then I see this team winning 6 games while still probably being the worst team in the division.
Okay, well, I'm glad that we can end this on a disagreement because I do not think that they will win 6 games. I think that they will. This is my pick for if I had to make a pick for the worst team in the NFL, it's probably either them or Cincinnati. I think that I don't. I do agree that Tyler Eifert, he'll be great for the 6 games that he plays for them. Their receiving core I think is pretty good. I think that I'm not totally sold on Fournette. He was doing so much, I think part of it is the offensive line. But it seemed like the most Leonard Fournette stat was when he had I believe the stat was that he had 25 rushes for 65 yards with a long of 69 because he was getting no yards, and then he just breaks off one long run. Seemingly that's what he does. And I don't love their line. I really think the line is not going to help. Yes, Minshew can scramble to sort of make up for it to some degree, but I don't think their offense is going to be great. I think it's going to be fine, and I think their defense is going to be very bad. So I think that I think this is going to be a bad team, which they're going to need a lot to go their way to win football games.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it, but I don't know. I do like Minshew, and I just feel like this team. I think Josh Allen does get better. He's very athletic, and I think he'd be very good. To where I think that this team should be good enough to at least get 6. That's the kind of thing I'm betting on here. Is like, okay, I don't think this team's going to be that bad. So I got to say that they win 6 games. I would still pick the Redskins or the Bengals to finish worse than them. I just feel like 6-10 seems appropriate.
Yeah, and
If I'm going to bet on Minshew, at least.
right, and I'm kind of going under the impression that Ngakoue won't be there. If he is, that could change some things as well with the defense. And then they drafted the guy from LSU, so they have Chase on, I believe, unless I'm remembering correctly. Yeah. So the defensive line, and that is something that they've done well throughout the course of these past few years. So maybe the defense won't be terrible. But I just think that they're a very incomplete football team, probably the most incomplete football team, even though there are things they do well.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, we'll see what happens. I do think the defense improves this next season. And I think there were so many problems in that locker room last year that maybe this year it's more of a fresh start. Now, of course, there's still problems in that locker room because Ngakoue and Fournette are both unhappy. But, if they can figure it out before the season, I think this team has enough players that are solid enough that I can bet on them getting 6.
Yeah, no, and I'm also not sold on Marone. I think I think this to me this seems like a sacrificial year where they're just kind of just going to leave things out to dry. Marone's going to get fired next year, and then we'll see what maybe if they can get a good coach, they could have things happen. But with that, I guess that's our show. Those are all 32 teams. Kyle, any closing thoughts on the over-unders?
Yeah, I can't wait to get grilled for the Cowboys pick. I'm really looking forward to that and saying that Dak Prescott's an outside MVP candidate. So that'll be interesting. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good show. So hope everyone enjoys that.
Yeah, it's fun. And a lot of disagreements, and that's always fun. So yeah, until next time, everyone, have a good one.